Hi, and welcome back to ThoughtBot's AI in Focus. I'm ThoughtBot CEO and a developer, Chad Pytel, and today I'm joined by senior developer at ThoughtBot, Thiago. Thank you for joining me, Thiago.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Chad, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be joining for the first time.
Yeah, I'm excited to work with you on this. Why don't you, while we get situated here, give folks a brief introduction of who you are and where you live, that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I am Thiago. I'm a senior developer at ThoughtBot. I've been working here for 4 years at this point. I live in Brazil, specifically in Natal, which is in the northeast of the country. Yeah, it's it's hot all throughout the year here. It's a nice place to live.
Well, I'm a little jealous of maybe your weather today because it's dark and gloomy and rainy right now in
Oh
Boston.
yeah, but to be fair, today was raining here too.
Oh, okay.
Like yeah, there like we had here it is hot all throughout the year, but there are some rainy weeks like during the year. And
Cool.
so yeah.
Well, once again, thanks for joining me. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing some fairly regular Rails development of a new feature in a Rails app. But if you were watching a couple of the previous streams, what we did was we were working on a flaky spec. And while we started to work on that flaky spec ourselves, we assigned the same issue on GitHub to GitHub Copilot. And if you're not familiar, GitHub Copilot has a new feature where you can assign issues to it on github.com, and it will automatically create a GitHub workspace and start working on the issue on GitHub's servers. And if you haven't watched one of those streams yet, I recommend you go check it out. What we found was that we were about the same speed. Me programming was about the same speed as GitHub Copilot. And for 2 of the 3 issues that we assigned on the stream, we arrived at pretty much the same fix in about the same amount of time. So those flaky spec issues were, and one of them was not correct. GitHub Copilot was not correct. So what we're going to do today is similar format, but we're going to do it with a real feature in a Rails app. So we have a real Rails app here that we use every day at ThoughtBot. and we're going to take a look at a feature request someone has made. We're going to talk through it. We're going to add any notes to the GitHub issue that we would ourselves want on the GitHub issue, and then we'll start work on it and we'll assign it to Copilot at the same time. And we'll see after we make progress on ours or finish, we'll go and see how GitHub Copilot got along.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very exciting. Like it's a new feature for me. Like I never used that feature before.
Yeah,
So
and I haven't used it yet for a feature. I've only used it to fix those flaky specs that on the stream last time. So it could work or it could not work. But hopefully what works along the way is us working on the feature. Hopefully we'll be able to make some significant progress on this. So I'm going to share my screen. And what we're going to do today is we have this messaging functionality in an app that we use at Thoughtbot called Hub. And a feature request from Ran, who's a managing director at Thoughtbot, that it's nice to see that 15 people will be notified of comments on a Hub message. It would also be great to see the same when publishing a new message, just as an extra check before hitting send. So what Ran is talking about is this screen here. It's the new message screen where you can enter in a title. And we have the concept of interests in Hub. So I've created some static data here. We have iOS, Rails, React, web design, and people can subscribe to interests. So Thiago, if you have any questions along the way, definitely comment. And for those who are watching on the stream, we really appreciate you watching. If you have any comments or questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. We've got it up here, and we'll see it and bring you into the conversation.
awesome.
So when I post a message, people will get notified if they are subscribed via email. But there's no indication as you're composing a message how many people will be notified about your message. Let me post a message. So we can see what that looks like and what Ran is talking about the subscriber count. So now no one is subscribed to these this interest right now because I just set up the database from scratch before we started to stream. But if someone was if people were subscribed to iOS or React, there would be 3 people are subscribed. Mention someone to add them, and we could actually click on that and be able to see the list of people who are subscribed. So that is the functionality we want to add to that new message screen. And you can probably see the complexity here, which is what I commented on here, which is, if as you're choosing the interests, the page isn't reloading or anything. So knowledge of who is subscribed is on the server. And as we add different interests, not only will different people be subscribed, but some of the same people can be subscribed but from the same interests. So my hunch is about the way that we would solve this. My go-to would be to use Turbo Stimulus to do a request when these change to an endpoint that will render, ideally, that we could reuse that same partial that's used to get the subscribers. I'm not sure that we'll be able to do that, but that would be ideal. Any thoughts on that approach, Thiago?
Yeah, that sounds good to me so far. But a question I have before we proceed, like you showed before a screen where we can see a comments form down below, and it says that nobody will receive the message. Does it mean that we already have some functionality in the app that will do the count?
Yeah. So this we can go over to here's the, oh no, that's not the form for a comment. If we go over the comment form, it looks to me like it's not yet a partial, but it's this code right here. So if comment people to notify any, then display this details element with a list of people who are going to be notified.
Oh, yeah, all right, yeah, it's good that we already have something that will do the count.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the approach looks good to me, but a question I have is, um, like, let me see. Do we need to? Um, no, no. I was thinking about something, but like it doesn't apply.
Okay, cool. So let's go to the GitHub issue and see whether we need to add any additional information that, like, we have some knowledge, but is there anything that we would want to, I think I already have this comment here from me, almost a year ago, after this was initially suggested, is that when you're choosing interest when composing a message, so the page doesn't have the information necessary to know who would receive the message without doing a background request to send the selected interest to the server and load in a response. So it didn't make the cut. So we need to do that when adding this feature, but it's likely worth it now. Do you think there's any additional documentation we should add to this issue before we pass it off to Copilot? You're muted.
Is Copilot like smart enough to know that it should use Turbo or something, and will we use Turbo? Like, is the phone backed by Turbo already? That's a question I have.
Yeah. So we could leave a comment being like, we would prefer to use Turbo streams to do this, or we could leave it off and see what it does.
All right.
What do you think?
Yeah. What do you think about? I can't think about anything to add to the issue right now. So, what do you think about just leaving it as is and
We'll leave it as is and see how it goes. So the way this works is you do need to pay extra for this feature to be able to assign issues to Copilot. I also believe it's in beta still, so they're saying it's beta. But when you do that, okay, now we're in a race against Copilot. Buckle up, folks. Let's go over back to the editor here.
Also,
so I want to start by writing a spec. Whoop, what?
I am assuming that Copilot will be smart enough to know where to make the change. Like, does that apply as well?
Yeah, what it's going to do is it's going to check out the repo. It's going to do some analysis on what we've written in the issue, and it's going to explain what it's doing along the way. In fact, so you can see it's already opened a pull request that it's whip, and it says, it's starting work. Now it's gonna like add additional notes and keep this updated as it goes. And since you haven't seen this before, you can, now that it started work, you can also view the session, and it'll take you over to a view of everything it's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start by writing a spec. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay.
I
I'm just
really
going to
like
create a
that as the
branch.
first step.
So I know we have a messages spec, which is a feature spec for posting a message. And here it is. It's creation and editing of messages. Um, and I can see by looking at the spec that it goes to that message path index, clicks on post message. It chooses an interest right here that was created, and then fills in the body. But then it saves it as draft. That's fine, I think, because what we really care about is right here and choosing this interests. And so I think we can modify this spec. I don't know what you think, but generally, depending on the feature and depending on the context,
Yeah. So,
I just paused because I just saw this other spec and I realized we're missing an edge case on what we're planning here, and that is people will be subscribed to the message not only from the interests that we have, but if you mention them in the message, they're going to be subscribed.
oh, interesting.
And so it's not just the interests that you have there. It really is whether you've mentioned someone as well.
Yeah, it looks like there's some inaccuracy to that. Like, are we okay just doing a count of the interest subscribers, or do we have to take that into account as well? Because I think that will increase the scope of the feature.
It
Like,
really
is it?
will, and I
Yeah.
guess are we okay having the first version of this not
Mhm.
I actually think that it is a little bit of a blocker to fully launching the feature. It could be really confusing if at the bottom above your submit button for a message it says nobody will be notified of this message, but yet you've mentioned someone in the
Yeah.
message.
Yeah, maybe we could change the wording. Like, could we have something like there are X people subscribed to
Yeah,
these interests? Like, that would be more focused and more clear.
that's a good way to handle the first pass. I think that sounds great. So I think I'm just going to start typing because when in doubt, start typing. So no one is subscribed to this interest. So when we go to first post a message, we're going to have that
Mhm.
text that says, what is it? Nobody. We'll use this text as the inspiration. No,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it'll
Nice.
be something like nobody.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
But then we have something about mentions in this message. Like,
yeah.
do we really
So
want that at this point?
unless they are mentioned,
Okay.
how does that read to you?
Yeah, I think that looks good so far.
Um, okay. So then after we add the interest to the message, no one is subscribed to it. So it should still say that.
Hmm.
And then maybe we'll create another interest with subscribers.
Yeah.
I don't think that with we can check factory.
Yeah, I really like how that's going. Like, we start. with an interest that doesn't have subscribers, and we assert that the message looks good. And then we select an interest that has subscribers, and then we expect that the message will change, like,
Yeah.
and it will provide us with a number, right?
Yeah, exactly. So then we create the subscription with the subscribed person, and the subscribable is going to be the interest with subscribers.
Yeah.
So after we add that interest,
just a question, like, is the variable name still correct? Like, it's currently interest with subscribers. Like, is it just interest? Like, because we are creating the subscriber on the line below, right? I think you call the variable interest with subscribers. Is
yep,
it-
right here. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
interest with
Okay,
subscribers.
Yeah, because
The one without subscribers I add first so we can make sure that it still says nobody.
yeah, all right, that makes sense to me because the subscription is added later. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. And then still inspired by this. So it'll just be one person will be emailed with your comment. So here we'll say one. We can say something like one person is subscribed to these interests.
Okay.
So let's run that. Obviously, it's going to, well, hopefully it's going to fail. Unless Copilot has already finished the feature and merged it in.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so we expected the page when we go to it to say nobody will be notified of your comment unless they're mentioned.
Just a question. It looks like we are relying on the factory defaults to provide the title, right? So what if both interests are created with the same title?
The factory wouldn't do that because it it sequences the title.
Oh, all right. Okay. But still, what do you think about providing an explicit name, just so like it's also seems a bit easier to read?
Oh no, it's title. So
yeah, like iOS or something.
Sure.
Yeah, Android sounds good.
Okay. So, okay. So now I think we can go over what we're dealing with here is the message form. And we have our form. And then down at the bottom, we have this form is shared between new and edit. So, so there's a submit button, and it's wrapped in a div. We're using Tailwind on this project. So I believe we should be able to just add a div right here. And let's start by just putting the text that we're expecting there.
Yeah. Sounds good.
If we refresh the page, we can see that it shows up there. Okay. It says that it expected to respond. Oh, I have a
Oh, yeah.
typo. It has context instead of have content. I typed that. I always do
Yeah.
that. It's one of the things I feel like everybody has little things that they always typo,
Yeah.
and I feel like
Like
I
interesting.
always type context instead of content.
Yeah, interesting that Copilot didn't warn us about it.
Yeah. Well, I did it the first time, and then I copied and pasted the next times. Okay, so it failed on the one person is subscribed to these interests, which is what we expected because we have that hard
Yeah.
coded there.
At this point, I would say we could start implementing some actual code.
Mm-hmm. Um, so we do have the what's on my mind is we have this comments thing here. And so it's like, oh, is there anything um, uh, Siri, I see your comment. I'm not sure I follow. Are you saying that maybe our change causes other things to fail in the spec? I'll run it in the background while we look at. So what I was thinking about was whether there's anything to reuse here. And I do think that we could but the text is different. Remember, we modified this text to be about the interests rather than, and it specifically says emailed with your comment.
Yeah. So, a question I have is: are we at the right place? Like, are we looking into the? Is that the form that we are working with now? Like,
This is the
this looks like
comment form, which we're
a
taking
comment form.
inspiration
Yes.
from, and I was just seeing whether there
Oh,
might
okay.
be anything that makes sense to reuse there.
Hmm.
And I'm
Yes.
thinking for right now, when we're just trying to get the specs, it's probably premature to try to look for something to
Mhm.
reuse. Um,
Um, yeah. Like, maybe what we could do, like, create, like, the first question I have is, should we use Turbo um,
mhm.
for that feature? How does that work currently?
Well, right now it doesn't do anything. Like it's just doing a regular form submit to create the message. That happens to be because we're using Turbo on the app. It happens to be a Turbo request, but there's no
Okay.
Turbo stream or anything like that right now.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I don't know about you, but my general approach is when I'm doing an implementation like this and I know I'm going to use Turbo, I'll like I'll start implementing it here for what the initial page load should look like. And
Mm.
in this case,
Yeah.
I went over to the message and because I happen to know like everything that gets notifications in Hub has this method called people to notify. And so that's the key collection that we're dealing with here. And we saw that on the comment too. Comments have people to notify. So um so if we were to I'm not gonna take the whole thing, but I'm gonna take just this
Mhm.
right here. So if we come over to the form here and we say
Mhm.
do we
Yeah.
have a message? Yeah, we have a message local variable. I
Mhm.
forgot to open my ERB. Um,
Yeah, I see your approach. Like we can implement the feature initially in a non-dynamic form. Like whenever we load the page, it will compute the right thing, and then we can make it dynamic with Turbo. Is that correct?
Yeah, and even if we don't get to the point where we're loading it, we're basically creating the right code that can then be extracted
Mhm.
into a
Yeah.
partial and sent in response to the turbo
Mhm.
or as a turbo update.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So this would be message.people.notify and one person is subscribed to these interests is what the wording that we had would be. And I'm realizing as I paste that if there's more than one person, it needs to be R subscribed to these interests. But we'll leave that for now. So I'm going to run the spec. It should still
Mhm.
fail, and
Yeah,
no other
I think
specs
so.
in the file failed when we ran them all. So there's no other.
Oops.
Okay, so we get undefined method attachments for nil. And I would
Mm.
just click through to where that comes from by command clicking on the line number.
Mhm.
Um, and I can see that's because this people to notify method um, goes through the mentions on the message to see whether you've mentioned anybody
Mhm.
that would be
Oh,
included.
interesting.
So
Oh, okay. Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's
that's
interesting
interesting.
because in theory, we could send the array of interests and the full rich text message body
Yeah.
to an endpoint that populates a message and says people to notify, but without saving the message.
Yeah, one thing I have in mind is as the user types in the form, we could do a partial form submission
Mm-hmm.
to a specific endpoint. Like it would instantiate the objects there,
Right,
and it will call the people to notify method. And
right,
that would give us the whole thing that we need, like the entire count,
right.
including dimensions. As long
So,
as we instantiate the object correctly and there are no dependencies that need to be persisted
yep,
because it will be
exactly.
in memory.
I totally think we should do that. And I think the first problem we're running into here is when body is blank, and
Mhm.
you call people to notify, you get this exception because body is nil.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to need to handle that in this case because you're going to be adding interests and the body, you won't have filled in the body yet. Um,
Yeah.
we can make sure it always has a blank string. It's a rich text, is an action text
Mhm.
field attribute. So
Okay. Yeah.
So we could write a spec. So people to notify. It includes the active subscribers. It does not include someone twice. Does not include someone with send individual messages to false. So we, in theory, could try to duplicate that spec. It does not error if there
Yeah. There is no message body.
is no message body.
Yeah, I
So
think
the way I like
there's
to write this
uh,
is I like to, yeah,
there's a
okay.
small typo, like you type not instead of
Yeah,
no.
thank you.
Problem.
We don't want to call save that auto completed. Okay.
It looks good.
I think we actually don't even want to say to not raise error. We just want to say
To be zero or
to be
something.
empty.
To be empty. Yeah, empty. It's not a count.
Let's run that and see what happens. I'm expecting we'll get the exception. Yeah. So the exact same exception we got from that other spec, undefined method attachments for nil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Okay.
now the moment of truth. We have this nil here. Body is present because that will always, I just happen to know that will always return the rich text, the action text thing. It's the second when you're asking for the body of that thing,
Mhm.
if it is where the nil is coming from. I don't necessarily like creating, I don't know about you, I don't necessarily like creating this chain here.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that as well. I thought about this approach. I am thinking about, do we have some sort of no object for the body that we could use, or even like, what if we assign an empty string to the body? What happens? Like, what if we instead of nil we provide it with an empty string? Does it work or does it
Yeah, that's a
fail?
good question. I actually don't know. Let's find out. That did work. Yeah.
Yeah, because we could provide a default value for the body.
See, the problem is it's the default schema for action text,
Oh, yeah.
rich text areas. It's a
Mhm.
separate model and table managed by Rails. Let's. It shows up in our schema. I think it's rich action text, rich text. You can see body allows null, and that's that's generated by the Rails generator. So, we could probably add a default and a not null there, but I don't know. Uh, Feels a little like an unspecified thing.
Um, yeah, so my question is, does action text play well with a default value? It should, right?
I would like to think that it would.
Yeah. But another approach would be to use, like, if we don't want to go this route of changing the database for now, like a quick fix that maybe would work would be to provide use an after initialize hook
Mhm.
to set an default value to the body.
What I was going to say, let me know what you think about this, is I would introduce this as a private method, but I would say, because we have um, and
Oh, okay.
then say if body, or actually I would write it as body dot presence,
Okay.
or oh no.
Yeah, or even maybe we could skip the private method and just have a guard clause to the mentions method. Like, it would return an empty array if there is no body.
Yeah, how do you feel about
What,
that?
what do you think? Yeah, it sounds good to me.
Okay, it allows us to move forward.
Hmm. Yeah, like that.
It knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh, cool. Okay. So we got a question on the stream about what it is we're doing because some people just joined. What we're doing is we are building a feature in Rails where it shows who's going to be notified about a message that we're posting. But we've assigned this issue to GitHub Copilot at the same time. And so Copilot is working on it in the background. Um, okay. So now if we run, oh, did I already run the spec? I probably already did. Yeah. Okay. So if we go back to our spec, I don't know if it's going to pass, but we'll see.
All right.
So it's running now.
Yeah, I don't really expect that to pass right now. I think.
Right, because we're not doing a turbo request, but where it
Yes.
should have failed is this one where it's adding the second interest, but no turbo request is actually happening. And
Mhm.
so we're not, it's the view is not being updated.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I think we're to the point now where we can go over to that form and think
Mhm.
about what we need to do in order to.
Yeah. So it looks like we could um, let me know your thoughts about that. But are we using stimulus? Yeah, I think we do have stimulus in Hub,
We
right?
do, and this is exactly what I was looking at. Is there already a messages controller? And I can see that there is
Yeah.
already a messages stimulus controller.
Yeah.
And here's what it's doing is it manages some state around scheduling messages to be posted. So you can click on this. Oh, it
Mhm.
looks like there's a view error where it's not centering the dialogue, but you can modify you can schedule a message to be posted later. But this actually saves the active record object. So what the messages controller is doing is if it turns out there was errors
Mhm.
after you save, it will show that
Mhm.
modal again.
Okay. Mhm. Yeah. Um, all right. Like what I was thinking about would be to attach a change event to the form. Like
Hmm.
whenever the user is typing something or changing something, maybe a change event would be
Yeah,
okay.
and we already have several because we have functionality in this app to auto save to your local storage as you draft any form, and it's a series of change events. So we're
Mhm.
already having some there. So I think that sounds good.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
so?
So one thing we could do, we could create an endpoint, a new endpoint, that whenever the event handler is triggered, it would submit a partial form to that endpoint,
Mhm.
and it would instantiate the mention there, and that action would render a page that would have a turbo frame that we could target, and that turbo frame would have exactly the message we want, like three people will be notified or something. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah, so I've just added a change thing here, change messages, and I called it update subscribers.
Oh, okay. We are doing this through JavaScript then. Yeah, because
Oh,
we
did I
we
miss?
have.
So, is there a way to automatically get the change hooked in on the form, not and take
Yeah,
advantage of Turbo submitting?
yeah, there is like,
Oh,
but it involves like clicking on a hidden button. Like we would create a button in the form, and whenever the change is triggered, it would click on that button, and that button would have a form method to override the method that this where the
yeah.
submission goes to, and it would be a different action.
Okay. You want to do that approach? That sounds good to me.
Yeah, it
So
sounds
we
good to
would
me.
still need a change right here, right?
Yeah, we do need it, right?
Okay. And then it'd be on the messages controller. And oh, it could still be called update subscribers.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, cool.
And then can we use button tag? I know that there's a form, there's a submit to or an action you can do an action on the button tag, right?
Yeah, I think button tag sounds good to me. We could start
Or
with
should it
that.
be form dot? Okay, yeah, button tag.
Yeah, I think button tag because it's not tied to the form. Like it's
Hmm.
something that doesn't regard the Rails model.
So this is the docs for button tag. Um,
It's yeah, and yeah.
do you remember off the top of your head what the attribute for it is?
No, I don't know. I always get confused with Rails view helpers. Like
Form action
I
attribute. That's what it
yeah, I
is.
usually form action, right? Oh, I see what you mean now. You mean the attribute that would do the override.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's form method. I think we do need form method and form action. Like form method will be get because we will be submitting to get endpoint. It wouldn't be a post. Yes, like that. And form action, it will be whatever we create now.
So what should we update? So this is update subscribers message path message.
Yeah, it's a new endpoint we
Yep,
need to
that
create, I
sounds
guess.
good. Actually, I think just subscribers message path.
Yeah, we could reuse, I guess, the same endpoint that is rendering this form now. I think
That's a good
that would
point.
work.
We could messages controller, the new action does take in message parameters
Oh yeah, that's right.
and it
Yeah,
renders
that's
new. So we could make that render a a turbo stream.
yeah. I mean, we don't need to render a turbo stream. Like we could just render the same form. Like I think we don't need to change the rendering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like whenever this form is called, like it would render the entire form, and we could target a turbo frame to update just the section that regards
Okay,
the
so then the
message.
path would be new message path,
Yes.
and it would have no, it wouldn't take a message.
Hmm. Yes.
Do we actually? Oh, okay, yeah, and then it needs to be get because it's to the new endpoint. That might be a
Yeah.
little bit of a,
Correct.
when we think about, oh, we're going to
Yeah.
submit the whole body of the message that you've typed. That might be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that might
Well,
be an issue, but I think we get requests have a limit of characters.
yeah,
I think it's 2,000 or something, but there are ways we can improve that later with a
yeah.
stimulus controller. I think there are also some nice articles on the Faultbox blog about that. Like this thing about submitting an action to the same get endpoint to make it render something, and
Hmm.
like we could do some incremental improvements. Like we could start
Yeah.
with that, and then we can improve that to not hit that character limit. You know, we could add some JavaScript later, but I think that's a good start. Yeah.
So all we need to do is click that other button.
Yeah. Yeah, we could maybe set a target on the
Yeah.
button so that we could click on it.
And I did add a class hidden to that.
Mhm.
I always, is it messages target?
Yeah, I always forget that, but I think you can use. Maybe we could take a look at the turbo documentation. I
Look
think
at the
it's messages.
documentation.
Yeah, this naming convention sometimes trips me up.
I know we have other ones right in here. So it's
Oh,
messages, it's
yeah,
underscore, not dash. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and here it is right there.
Oh, yeah. It's controller name underline target. That's right, and then the name of the target as the value. Yeah, I like that. Cool. Like a submit something. Oh, subscribers submit.
I don't
Oh,
know. If you have a better name, I'm
partial,
happy to.
maybe partial submit. I'm not sure.
What did you say?
Partial submit. Yeah, because we are just doing a partial submit of the form to render something.
Yeah.
That's not the best name, but it could work for
Okay.
now.
Partial submit. So we go back to the controller. We add
Yeah,
that
that's
there. And then we say, okay, this partial submit dot click.
yeah.
Okay. And so do we need to tell something with Turbo to replace the.
Yeah. I think we could turn the div that you introduced in the page to turbo stream. Oh, I mean turbo frame. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
We
This right
could,
here.
yeah, we could give it the name of a turbo frame. I mean, we could give the turbo frame a name that we can use to target. You know.
Yep. So it's
I think it's turbo frame tag. There's a Rails helper for that. Yeah.
I like that suggestion.
Message people to notify. Yeah, we could close the turbo frame. Yeah.
I think we need an equal sign here. We no longer need the div, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Our spec, just in case anybody's wondering, is hey Nate. Nate says that back on Upcase when we were doing personal coaching, I remember. Nice to see you. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, back in 2011, I was also an Upcase user.
And now you work at Thoughtbot. See what it can do.
Yeah.
Um,
It's awesome.
Sweet. Okay, so I'm just running the spec again, but what I was going to say was I wanted to verify that this was a JavaScript spec, and it already is. So that's good. So it passed.
Oh, did it pass
It passed.
already? Oh, really? How
Uh-huh.
come? Yeah, I wasn't expecting this to pass right now.
I was sort of thinking that it could because we added the click to the form, we added the turbo frame. So
Yeah.
unless we had like an error somewhere, there was a chance that it would work, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think
Let's go to the
so.
browser and see
Oh
what
yeah, yeah, yeah.
actually.
But yeah, I think that makes sense. That's correct. But I think it's rendering the entire form. We are not yet targeting the turbo frame. But the
Look at
good
that.
thing with turbo is that we can work incrementally. Like it already works, but we can just pimp it up and improve it with some tweaks, like targeting the turbo frame, for example.
Hmm.
Like the
See,
current
but do you
way.
see how it's updating there? That's nice.
Oh, nice, awesome.
And if I remove them, it goes down.
Yeah, the
And
bad
I
thing,
think even if I
is
mention
is that
someone,
is the user would lose focus. Like if the um, if the focus is on a certain field, like if the form gets rendered again, the user will just lose the focus because it's replacing the entire form. So we could target the turbo frame later.
did you see that as you were talking? I mentioned someone. It didn't trigger the change event when I modified the text area.
Okay.
I actually think that that's why we're doing with the drafts. We're actually doing like input as well. Um, but then I left the field and did a change, triggered the change up here, and now it says one person is subscribed.
Oh, so does it mean it's working then?
It means it's working with a
Oh,
mention as well.
yeah, cool. That's
And if
awesome.
I
You know,
if I
we
remove that mention and retrigger the change, it says nobody.
Yeah, awesome. We are just getting the mentions for free now, and we weren't expecting that.
Right, right, because we're submitting to the endpoint and we're using the object which was already parsing the mentions. It's sending the whole body, rich text body, when it sends the submission.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
That's pretty nice. So you were talking
That's
about the input, the focus being lost.
Yeah, I think so. Like, what if you hit tab, like, and you type some interests? Like, what happens if you hit enter on an interest? Like, would it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it lost the
focus.
focus.
Let's just make sure that that doesn't already happen because this is a element. Okay, yeah, it doesn't already happen. So we have a passing spec. So let's commit this.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me so happy when we try to do something complex and with so little effort, it works.
Right. Shall we check on Copilot now that we've made a commit of something that's basically working?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay. Moment of truth. It's okay.
Oh,
So well, it's not passing CI. It finished 30 minutes ago. It finished doing things 30 minutes ago.
mhm.
Let's take a look at the pull request. What this PR does, it adds an API endpoint interest subscriber count that calculates unique subscriber count for selected interests. It uses stimulus controller to fetch subscriber count via Ajax when interests are selected. Displays X people will be notified. Handles overlapping interests by counting unique subscribers only.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
Uh,
It's really impressive that it managed to, get it working.
there's a screenshot of the
Oh, what's that?
I don't know what that is. Is it a hallucinated image of the screen, or is it actually taking a? I don't know. The screenshot shows the feature in action.
Yeah, did it make it up, or
You know,
did it
if it's
actually
not a
took a screenshot?
JavaScript spec, I guess that might be what it looks like. But that's interesting. Let's look at the code. subscriber count. So this is the API controller. It takes interest IDs and gets the total subscribers for them, and it.
Chad, would you mind bumping up the font
Oh yeah,
size a
sorry, no
little bit?
problem.
Thank you.
It introduced a new stimulus controller called interest subscriber count. And so it's only getting the subscriber count from the interests. It's using fetch here.
Yeah, using the fetch API.
Yeah. I mean, but there is a Rails. I noticed because it's having to manually set the CSRF token, but there's a Rails JavaScript provided thing that'll do that automatically for you. One person will be notified. Okay. And then when it comes to the form, it's doing interest. It added the interest subscriber count controller. I don't see where it's. Where is it triggering?
You mean, are you looking the place where it triggers the event
Yeah.
that calls the stimulus controller?
Yeah. So here's what it did. It replaced the form select tag, or it not replaced it, but it added the change event just directly to that, as opposed to the whole form like we did. And it did write a spec for here's a request spec for the API endpoint, but there's no spec for, there's no integration spec. Okay, so seeing this, what's your take?
I think it's a very specific solution. Like I would say it's a bit hard coded or something like it. It does what it needs to do, but I don't think it's like the best solution.
We
Like
also
when we are
don't know,
using,
because it didn't add the integration spec, we don't know that it actually works.
oh yeah, that's also another point. But when using Turbo, I really enjoy solutions where we don't have to use the fetch API. Like we are just
Right.
using the power of forms. That is a very I would say something that is less complex than JavaScript. Like we can just use the HTML we have, and that will provide us with all the functionality which we are doing in our solution. Like we are just reusing the form, we are submitting it on change events, and it's re-rendering the page. And it's also our approach is more thorough because we are reusing code that already exists. Like we are writing much less code than Copilot did
Right.
to accomplish the same thing. And I think our solution in the end would be more maintainable as well.
Yeah, definitely. I brought up CI here, and with this is the CI, and even the specs that it wrote for the new interest controller are not passing. That's interesting to me because when we were doing this before, it would work to get the specs correct. So the fact that it's failing is interesting. We can view the session.
Yeah, there is a comment in the chat, like maybe Copilot don't have the full context of the code base.
So that's right when you're using potentially your code base within Visual Studio Code. but when you're giving the when you are assigning an issue to Copilot, you can see here it checks out the whole repository. This is a Rails application. Let me explore the app structure to understand the code base better, focusing on messages and interests. So what it actually did there was it then does exploration on its own. Like it grepped, or not grepped, it found messages and interests using find. It found the views in the models related to those things. And then it looked at the models to gain the context. So it did that automatically. It's getting the context of the relevant stuff intentionally loaded up into context. So it's just really interesting, and I think one of the reasons why it is able to come up with as reasonable of things as it does. It then look at the subscriptions. So what we're looking at now, Nate asks, what is the tool in the browser? This is assigning a GitHub issue to GitHub Copilot. So everything is running. There's a feature in GitHub now. It will run on GitHub servers this new Copilot agent.
That's a nice comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not yet. Not yet. Our jobs.
It did. What's interesting to me is, as we look at it, it did pretty much exactly what we did as we were spinning up context. We said, because we did the same thing. It was like, how is the count displayed now? And we went and it looked at the subscribers partial, which gives you the count of the subscribers. It's different than the comment form that we looked at, but it's pretty much like, okay, how do we find out about subscribers? So the process that it went through to be able to do this, I'm just going to scroll down to the end. So then it did the messages controller. So because what I came here to find was whether it was running the specs. You can see even it's not command F on RSpec install the missing gems with git bundle install. Does that. Let me understand the task without running the full test suite for now and implement my solution. Let me create the plan. What I'm trying to see is whether it was running the specs to see whether they pass or not. So let me check to see if our implementation is working by seeing if I can manually run the code without the full Rails stack. Let me commit our changes first and then test them properly. I don't actually see where it is running. Okay, so here it attempts to find the specs for the API again. Now let me test with a simple browser simulation. Let me create a simple test to manually verify the logic. So it wrote a Ruby script. That's super interesting. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna and then it's running that. Okay, I'm going to comment on this pull request, saying It looks like CI is failing. But also, instead of using fetch to a custom API endpoint, how do we want to word this? Can we reuse
the HTML primitives like forms?
The message's new endpoint and what were you saying?
And the HTML primitives forms. Not sure how to put it.
And what would we call and
forms which are
update a
HTML
turbo
primitives
frame with the
That's cool.
subscribers count? I sort of just want to see if we send it in that direction, what it does. So let's comment with that. It's probably not the perfect comment, but
yeah.
So Copilot reacts with the eyes to let you know it's looking at it. This is sort of interesting once you comment, because you can then click on view session and it's spinning up, but
yeah, but what stands out to me is that it finished the pull request with failing tests, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm planning on doing on a future stream, and this just triggered my memory of it, it said starting MCP server. So if you set up MCP in your code base, it will use it. And so you can get slightly better. I believe the idea is you can get slightly better results. And there is a gem that you can install in development and test mode of your Rails app that will expose MCP. So we have a great stream. Sammy did it a couple weeks ago where they talk about what MCP even is. But in a nutshell, it basically is an endpoint that exposes an API for making standardized requests of an LLM, making standardized requests of knowledge. Okay, so it says, I'll start by exploring the repository to understand the current code structure and the changes I made, then address the comment about using CI failures and the suggestion to use the message's new endpoint with turbo frames instead of a custom API endpoint. So it's getting to work. Now it's running. Let me also run the test to understand what CI issues there might be. So I think it's, oh yeah, okay, so it's setting up Ruby. So while that works, I'm curious, how do we get it to maintain the focus?
Yeah, so I think we need to, if I'm not mistaken, we need to change the button, the hidden button that we introduced, to target the turbo frame.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't remember how to do that right now. I think it's data turbo frame or something.
So this is on, we can find this probably on Hotwire.
Yes.
Frame targeting the whole page by default, which is what's happening now, right?
Yeah, like it's a data turbo frame actually. yeah, data turbo frame and the name of the turbo frame. I think that would probably do the trick.
On the submit button.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I worked with that like a few months ago, and
Like
my
this,
my
that it's auto
memory
completing.
my memory is failing me right now.
It's auto
Yeah.
completing turbo frame message people to notify,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
what it's
That's it.
called.
I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So now it's just
It's
targeting that
working.
specifically.
Can we take a look at the diff later to see what our change set looks like?
Yeah.
But not, you
Let me just
not right
commit
now.
that.
Mhm.
We'll look at it on GitHub. It'll be a nice view of it.
Let's see.
So, so it looks like it's 31 lines of code, 4 deletions.
Mhm.
Partial submit with that update subscribers to click the button. We needed to handle that case where the body was blank.
Yeah. Maybe that change specifically isn't necessary for this pull request, but I think it's good that we have it anyway.
It would
I
result
think
in an
would
error.
it
If
was
we didn't
great.
add it, it would result in an error, which I think would
Oh,
probably be
oh, right, yeah, it
nothing.
would.
Like it probably actually would just fail rendering because it would
Yeah, yeah,
respond with a
that's
500.
that's
And
that's correct. Yes,
so
you are
it might
correct.
be seamless to the user, but we would know in our hearts that the exception
Yeah,
was happening.
I think it's a
And in our
problem
century.
during the initial render of the page.
Oh, you're right.
It's
Yeah, it was a
the
problem
first
then.
render in
Yeah.
the page. Yes.
So we need to, as I'm looking at the diff, I remember that it doesn't, we need to also do, now we should in theory add a spec for this. But it's, I know from past experience, it's difficult to add a spec to get a change event, an input event to fire on a rich text field in your capybara specs. And
Okay.
that's what that problem is solving for. And what this, so now what should happen, actually I need to refresh, is if we, that's weird, I can't, okay, there. If I mention someone, I don't know whether they're gonna, oh, something's happening. There's no errors, but I can no longer click into,
Oh, you mean you can't click on
I
the
can
rich
no
text
longer,
area?
like, I can do it the first time, and then after I type into the field, I can no longer, like, it becomes inactive. Ah, yes, thank you. Look, it's doing. Thank you for catching
Yeah,
that.
yeah, right. That's something we can improve later. Like we can do some progressive enhancements to the form and also remove these get parameters from the URL.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know what's causing the form to become inactive. It happened after I added this.
Yeah, it's not friendly with this event.
We're using it to save the drafts. I'm just surprised we're not seeing a JavaScript error there. I removed it, so let's see if that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems to be working now.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is. No, I've lost the input. It's probably best. This might be like, for all we know, this is an existing problem. Let's go to see whether we can replicate that problem. Okay. It's not. I'm not able to replicate it. So is it possible that the turbo stream being updated is somehow messing with the initialization of the tricks JavaScript on the page?
So, like, is the problem only on the input event,
I removed the input event.
and it's still happening?
Yep. Yeah, I think maybe it was happening before and we just didn't
Okay.
notice.
Sorry, could you show me again what the error looks like, so that
Yeah,
I
it's hard to tell
don't get
because
it.
it's what's not happening that matters. So see how the cursor is in
Okay.
tricks?
Yes.
If I go up here and I remove interests, and so I trigger it, I can now no longer, tricks becomes inactive. This stuff
Okay.
is working, but I can no longer click into the tricks text area to type.
Yeah. So that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen on the production app. Is that
That
correct?
doesn't happen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I have no idea.
Yeah.
What
My
if
guess
we?
is that something with the turbo frame updating or something is
What
causing
if we
tricks
remove
to fail.
the change event? Does it fix it?
If I remove the change event, like,
Yeah.
so it's not happening at all.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it seems to be something with the change event there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So now obviously the functionality is not working anymore because I disabled the change event.
Mm-hmm.
Let me let me put it back. I wonder actually whether, because I was refreshing the page. Yes, same thing. It's I'm not able to click into the.
Does it happen if just one enters instead of two? Does it still happen if you do that? Yeah, we have two enters at first. Like if we remove, like, does it only happen when the interest field is empty? That's what I mean. Oh no. It's whenever it changes.
So part of what's happening here, I'm realizing it's coming back every time because of this draft functionality. So
Mm,
if you start filling out a form, the form is being saved to local storage. So if you
mhm,
accidentally close the tab or navigate away, it doesn't clear that form until you submit the form.
uh-huh. Oh, okay.
And what happens when you submit the form is the draft is cleared.
Hmm.
We're triggering a form submit with an alternate button.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I think this
Oh, I
drafting
see.
functionality is probably, at the very least, it's going to be conflicted because we're
Conflicting.
basically clearing our draft. um, but
Yeah.
it also could be the source of this problem.
Yeah, that seems to be the problem. At least it's making sense to me right now.
Mhm.
It's something we need to handle, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I feel good about the progress we made. Let's go back over to Copilot and see
Mhm.
what it did in response to our uh,
Mm.
feedback. So it did comment, I've refactored the approach to address both issues. I removed the custom API endpoint, reused the messages pattern, added messages subscriber count action that returns HTML partial. TurboFrame updates now uses HTML partial updates instead of JSON fetch calls. The new implementation follows Hotwire conventions more closely and reduces the number of endpoints. The subscriber count calculation logic remains the same, but is now integrated into the main messages controller flow. Let's look at the
There's,
actual change.
yeah, there's a link to the commit. I think it's the last. Oh, yeah, we are looking at the change set.
So it added a non-restful endpoint, again, just to get the subscriber count, which, to be fair, I'm realizing we never told it about that edge case of mentions,
Yeah.
which we had spotted, but we
Mhm.
didn't tell Copilot about it.
Yeah.
So it didn't pick that up.
Mhm.
Um, and this whole thing around calculating the subscriber count based on the interest IDs is really interesting. That was another piece of context that we picked up on, which was there's an existing method called people to notify. And so if you can populate the message, then it will give you back. You don't need to re-implement this functionality.
That's fair.
This also, I'm noticing this code doesn't remove yourself from if you're subscribed to the interests, and we got that for free by reusing the people to notify method.
Yeah, it's like what calls my attention is that it's doing the calculation like partially in memory as well. It's not doing a database query or something more efficient.
Right.
At least that's what it seems to me.
Right. It's still using fetch, which actually, to be honest, completely surprises me.
Oh yeah,
I'm really surprised that
it's
that it's still doing that approach, but it is using the subscriber count endpoint. We told it to use the messages new action in our pull request,
yeah, we did.
but it didn't pick up on that. Um, it introduced a partial, and oh yeah, it renders that partial from the controller. Okay, well, this is still not good enough.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's close. It's close. I
it's
bet,
close. Yeah.
like, and I think part of the idea is, while you're working on other things, You might be able to like leave a comment and let it go off on its own and tweak it to
Yeah,
get it to the point where it's good. That was much better with the flaky specs, which was like
yeah,
the did you make the test? Did you address the issue or not? Is a much more localized change, and it seemed like rather than feature development, it seemed much more self-contained. I think this is challenging,
yeah.
but
I wonder if we could have provided it with more context, and it
right.
would do a better job. I'm not sure, but yeah. But I think we told it to reuse the messages new endpoint, and
Mm,
it did
we
do
did.
that.
I went over to CI, and these changes pass now. Oh, they pass because it removed the specs. There's no specs in this PR.
Yeah, yeah. But it's still impressive that it managed to put this together. Anyway.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that about does it for today. Thank you for joining me. I had fun working on this issue, and as is
Thank you
often
so
the
much.
case, I think we'll polish this up and actually finish it and get it into Hub. Um, if you or your company is looking to build a new Rails application or improve an existing Rails application, do Rails upgrades, add new features better than Copilot, now you know where to come. You can come to Thoughtbot for that. Um, we'll be back next week. I think we've been a couple of weeks assigning issues to Copilot. So we'll do something different next time. If you've got ideas for things you'd like, tools you'd like to experiment with, new AI features in your products that you're wondering about how you would implement, um, definitely comment on the video, and because I'm looking for ideas for future episodes. So, speaking of future episodes, I'll see you next time. And Thiago, thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Until next week.
I do appreciate it too.